Welcome again. Here we are with number 6 in the current series of reflections. And this time I'm going to start by pointing out two symbols for the topic that we're going to, or the aspect of our topic which we're going to face today. One of them is this. Yes, it is a hood. What it really should be is one of those, not a hood that's attached to a coat, but one of those black hoods that they pull over their faces and over their shoulders with just two slits for the eyes to be seen. The black hood of the terrorists. Well, I don't have one, fortunately, and unfortunately I couldn't find any of my friends who had one either. So, as we've all seen them on television and in the media, newspapers and so on, often enough, you can just imagine that this is a terrorist's hood. With just the slits for the eyes. Okay, a black hood. And the other image, symbol, reminder of today's topic or aspect of the topic we're going to look at is this. Boxes upon boxes upon boxes of medications to solve every possible human sickness, disease, etc., etc., etc. So, endless boxes of medication and a black hood. If you just hold on to those two symbols, you will have captured the perspective on which we take today's theme in the life's journey that we're all making. A few weeks ago, we looked at the great problem we're having today, especially in the Western world, but in actual fact throughout the whole of our human family, with the question of migration. People getting up for one reason or another and moving in thousands and hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands from the country where they were born and brought up, moving into another part of the country, another part of the same continent or across the continents, risking their lives on land and on sea, to find somewhere else to live, to find somewhere more comfortable, more rewarding, with better food, better climate, and also looking at the fact that humanity has always been a migratory species. From our waking up as Homo sapiens, discovering self-reflective consciousness, developing self-reflective consciousness, we began to travel round this globe. Now we also travel out into space, between the planets, the galaxies, always on the move. Another feature of our human family is the fact that we are very violent. We behave violently with each other, and we always have. Most of us watching this series will be at least a little familiar with the scriptures of the Jewish tradition, the Old Testament, and the Genesis story. How did it all begin? The story of how we were meant to live on planet Earth in a paradise of beauty, of peace, where the fullness of life was available for all of us. But we lost it. We lost it why? Greed. The desire to be in control, the desire to be the one who has the authority, and prepared to tell lies and to be brutal with each other. destructive, violent with each other, to gain power, control for myself. The second step in the story of Genesis continues, with the first two human beings who were supposed to have been born on planet Earth, the brothers Cain and Abel, who also, seemingly without real reason for doing it, provocation, one murdered the other. He murdered his brother. Jealousy, greed, the power to be the only one who had authority. Well, the story has continued right up to the present day. So even if you wish to dismiss the story of Genesis, you will find the situation it describes to be equally true of the everyday experience of all of us on planet Earth now. Our desire for power is much stronger than our desire for peace. Our desire for violence is much stronger than our desire for love and respect. And if you're not sure you believe me, dismiss Genesis and look at today's newspapers, today's entertainment channels on television in most of the Western world anyway, and discover prime time is given to crime stories, night after night after night. Murder, brutality, violence. And if you say, oh, well, this is all fact, this is all fiction, well, the fact, if you turn to the world's news, is no brighter as a story. Is there peace anywhere on planet Earth? Lasting peace? Is it not perhaps true, or a true image that Genesis wrote for us, that there is no peace among us? We have lost the capacity to live in respect and in love with each other. That violence, greed, desire to be in control, the only one in control, has taken over our lives. Terrorism. The Black Hood, representing the terrorists, whose ideal is to win world authority through violence. When we look at our history all the way through the centuries, most often our great men and women have been those who were war generals or the politicians, the ones who could demand the use of the greatest majority, greatest proportion of resources from each other. Violence between us, and now violence with the planet also. The amount of garbage we throw into our living ocean, so important to us, so important for our lives, our health and well-being on planet Earth. And if we hadn't learnt the dangers of the destructiveness of garbage in our oceans, we believe we're already doing it in space. The amount of garbage, unwanted technology that we're letting loose in space, because we haven't learned to think of the end result before we develop a piece of equipment that will give us temporary satisfaction or power or control. Violence between us, violence with the cosmos, violence with the planet. We've only learned how to grab the resources of us all for ourselves. not how to share, not how to develop so that we can all share. We know the situation. The Genesis story may have been a story, but it's today's story also. Early on in our history, in our development as a human race, species, we discover that violence arises naturally from our fear of each other. And our earliest religious traditions tried to teach us ways to avoid using our energy to be destructive of the life of each one. You remember some of the arts, the martial arts, karate, Taoism. What did they teach us? That when we're faced with violence coming towards us, we have two possibilities. We either stand and fight back, increasing the violence, or we run away, so that the enemy, the pursuer, the more powerful, runs after us and continues to be violent and brutal. And the martial arts try to teach us how to face the violence of the other, to accept the anger and the violence of the other, and move it to a neutral place, so that neither the other, nor myself, nor anyone else gets hurt, destroyed by the violence, by the anger, by the fear of the other. We learned this very early in the history of our human family. And people around the globe today are still trying to learn how to deal with the violence and the anger and the greed for power of the other members of the family. How to hold them and move them into a neutral place, so that neither myself nor the other get destroyed and have life, which is our greatest gift, taken away from us. So, here is the hood, representing the violence within all of us, which grows out of our fear of each other, the fear we have within ourselves, and the need we have to wear black hoods to prevent our faces being seen, out of the shame we have for recognizing the violence within ourselves, the lack of respect, the desire for power rather than the desire for love and sharing. The second symbol we had here were the endless boxes of medication. The healing sciences and the healing arts have developed in our era to an amazing degree. We have therapies, psychotherapies, physiotherapies, all sorts of branches and descriptions of how to bring healing to the body, psyche, person that each one of us is for a very short time while we journey through time, space on planet Earth. More and more medication, more and more remedies, more and more methods and training. Are we still learning, having to learn that the violence is within myself? And the only way to overcome the violence is to overcome the fear within myself. Here, quite quickly then, here today is one of our questions to go. Our different cultures and traditions, particularly our different religious traditions through our history, have taught us different ways to look at those who are disadvantaged, who have physical handicaps or psychological handicaps. And one of my questions to go today is for you to find out, if you can, some of the differences between the way different cultures have approached what we now consider as physical disadvantages. I'm thinking of one moment where a person is a dwarf, physically a dwarf, so small in stature, with limbs that are disproportionate, hands and arms and head, that we consider this a great disadvantage, and not something we would wish to happen to me. But not all cultures saw this dwarfism as a disadvantage, as a handicap. And I'm thinking of one, but you find it out, where the dwarf in society, because he or she was different, was valued because they were simply different. They were valuable. We had to take care of them. And you might look at what have we developed fairly recently in our own society of today, in the sporting world, the Olympic Games, where now we have the Paralympics, where people who have what we would consider serious physical disadvantages, handicaps, have special races and games and events organized for them. And then perhaps the shock that some sports people underwent when more recently it was announced that a runner, an ordinary runner on a track, was able to clock up a faster speed because he had both two artificial legs than the Olympic runner who had his two natural legs. So we begin to wonder, when it comes to speed on the running track, which of the two is disadvantaged? It's interesting to start looking at the attitudes we may have been taught, developed, or just absorbed without really giving much attention or reflection to the health and the giftedness of our own body and mind and emotions. Turning our limits into new horizons. So the next question to go is, where am I? Am I a healer or am I a destroyer? Am I more concerned with bringing love and help and encouragement and sharing gifts with those I consider to be disadvantaged? Or am I just sinking back into my black hood, into my own fear, refusing to accept that it is my fear that produces cowardice and violence? Violence within me, cowardice within me, coming from my own inability, unwillingness to recognize my fear. And instead, to try and bring healing of injury, of pain, physical, psychological, social, to those who perhaps are less gifted, physically and psychologically, than I am, those who have had less advantages in life than I have. Am I willing to share my physical health, my psychological health, my resources? If I have not faced my own fear, my own cowardice, I will not be able to bring healing to myself or to anyone else. I don't need skills in any of the particular medical branches of medicine or therapies that we have available for us today, if we wish to train in them. We just have to be peaceful, loving, human being to human being. We are not going to bring peace to planet Earth through summit meetings. Summit meetings where people go in as pacifiers. They're wanting to bring temporary peace so that I get the best advantage out of the situation that I can, very often trade. I'm not entering a peace summit meeting as a politician, very often, with the hope that I can heal the wounds of the other, relieve the pain, bring back joy and self-respect. But unless we can do that, we will never overcome the violence within ourselves, the fear within ourselves. My reflection today and during this coming month will be to look at my cowardice, my blackwood, my desire to heal, my willingness to share the life I have, the advantages I have for developing life. If I'm willing to be a healer, I will help to bring peace to our world, to turn human violence into respect and love, where everyone has the right to life, has the right to expect that others are willing to share. But I cannot expect that others will share and heal if I'm not also prepared to share and heal and respect all others. We know the situation of violence in our world. We know brutality has been part of our history from the beginning and is today. Is it not time to be willing to have our own brokenness healed, to face our cowardice, our violence, to allow ourselves to be healed, with the hope that we can then bring healing to others and bring the peace that this world was created for, the beauty, the joy, the fullness of life for which humanity came into being, to bring it at last to completion.